you looking to sharpen your budgeting skills? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast, where we talk about life, family, and how to afford it. And now, the Budget Couple themselves, Nate and Danielle.
Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast. I'm Nate.
And I'm Danielle.
And this week we're going to be talking about food and food budgeting and a whole bunch of stuff related to food. But before we do that, I really want to encourage you to please review our podcast on iTunes or whatever podcast tool you use. It really helps us out and helps us reach more people. And also make sure you check out our website at www.budgetcouple.com.
So I'm going to start with a tagline. Going out for food can add up quickly. And I know this is something a lot of people can relate to. I think both of us can. It's something we've had to work on, but it's super fun to go out to eat. It's relaxing. You don't have to cook, which is a wonderful thing because I don't think either one of us are like master chefs.
I like to cook, but I also like to eat. And whatever way gets food into my mouth quicker is better for me.
And then when you add in a toddler, it just makes things more confusing. So, and also full-time work for both people. So going out can sound really nice, but it also can waste a lot of your money. So it's important to kind of think about how that's adding up and where your money's going. So I wanted to do just a really quick calculation to illustrate the point. So if you go out to lunch as a couple, so each one of you goes out to lunch, say twice a week at work, which I think is pretty reasonable. A lot of people tend to do that, maybe even more often. And then say you go out as a couple to dinner once or twice a week, and it equals up to about $50. So let's go back to those lunches. Say they're about $8 a piece. If you're doing 4 of them, 2 for each, it's $32 a week that you're spending on lunches. If you do one dinner a week at $50, that adds up to around $328 a month. So it doesn't sound like a lot in the moment with an $8 lunch at work. But when you add it all together to $328 a month, it's a lot more.
To put that in perspective, our car payment for our electric car is about the same amount of money. So we went out to dinner and lunch, but we could have also just paid for our car if we would have done that. Now, before we go really far into this, we're not advocating that you do not go out or anything like that, because there's no quicker way to turn somebody off of budgeting than saying you can't do things. This episode is more really about being thoughtful about how you spend your money and putting money in places that makes more sense, so you can kind of get a better idea of where your money's being used and then attack things differently and potentially better.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely not about saying don't go out to eat, because we definitely still go out to eat, and we'll talk about that in our strategy here in a second. So for lunch at work, I probably like to go out more than Nate does.
I like to go out. Don't get me wrong. I like to go out. Being a teacher, it's a little more difficult for me to get out to lunch because I don't have kids that kind of rely on me being there. But I think of the two of us, I prefer to go out much more than she does.
Okay, that's probably true. He doesn't have as much opportunity. I have a cafeteria that's semi-good and really cheap for DC, just below me, on a couple floors below me. So I tend to want to go down to my cafeteria. But let me go back and say that when we go out to lunch for work, when we're by ourselves at work, we add it to our personal budget. So if you remember back from our previous podcast, we talked about how we give ourselves $150 each a month. And any sort of going out that's where we're by ourselves, we put it on that budget. So I personally try and leave aside a little bit of money each month, maybe around $40. So I have that opportunity to go out to eat whenever I want at work.
Yeah, I don't think that much about it. I just kind of...
what a surprise.
Yeah, I have the $150 and I buy stuff until I don't have that money anymore, and then I have to wait till the next month.
Which is usually about day 3 of the month for him.
Sometimes. It's a terrible way to do things, but again, because we put that self-limiting kind of factor in there, it stops me from going crazy, because I probably would go crazy.
Much more than me.
Yeah, but you are the person who saved money under their mattress when they were a kid. I was not quite that person.
I think it was in a book, actually. So I just want to say that to me, putting your lunches that you go out for in your budget kind of makes you more conscious of how much you're spending when you're going out. Because like Nate said, it's taking it away from what you can actually buy that month. So for me, I'm like, oh, I really want to go out to lunch today, but I also really want to buy some clothes this month. And so I can't, if I can't do both, then I'm probably going to opt for the thing I want more in the end. So in the moment for me, it might be lunch, but...
I was going to say, hunger is a powerful, powerful force.
That's true. But yeah, I mean, it just makes you more conscious of how much you're spending when you go out and whether you really actually want to be spending your money on that. So that's what helps me.
Yeah, and the other thing that's nice about this is while we have our individual budgets for doing whatever we want with, we do have a together budget. And part of that together budget is dedicated to going out.
We put anything like... And I want to say that actually, before we start that, I don't know if we ever mentioned it in any of our podcasts, but as we said before, our budget is always evolving. And recently we ended up splitting up our together spending money into random and going out. So random for us is things like household items. We started to get a lot of those for cleaning supplies or whatever, something.
Yeah, things for the yard, just stuff that you really don't want to spend money on, but you need to.
And so we would be putting that on our together budget, and it would be to us, it would feel like it would be taking away from like what we could spend going out.
Literally taking food out of our mouths.
Yeah, and beer and such. So instead we split it up, and we actually didn't increase it at this point, but we just split it in half. So now we have a going out budget, and that's for anything like dinners, beers, movies, whatever it may be. And that's kind of helped us just separate it in our mind a little bit and not feel so guilty for going out. We tend to only go out once a week on weekends, mostly because we don't really have time on the week.
Yeah, time doesn't really exist on the week to do it, so weekends is when we go out to get food.
But we do allow ourselves to do that. So we go out usually once a weekend, maybe twice, but usually if we go out twice, it's smaller meals. But it works out to about $150, which happens to be our going out budget right now. And we usually spend around $30 to $40 per trip.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not super fancy people. We don't go and get anything super crazy. But if we do go out to a place and get a couple of adult beverages or anything like that, our next week's going out will be significantly smaller, where we'll spend maybe $10 or $15 and get a pizza, and that will be what we do to go out with.
The next thing we wanted to talk about was, all right, say you want to limit how much you're going out. How do you do that, basically? And the way we've done it is basically thinking a little bit more into our groceries and our planning for the meals for the week. So all of our meals that we don't go out for, we cook at home, of course. I personally hate cooking a lot.
I like cooking plenty, but Danielle does not allow for me to cook as much as I would like because she has some control issues with pretty much everything.
Yeah, I do. And I mean, but like, to be fair, he really does eat foods only from the kids menu. If you just look up a kids menu, that's what Nate eats. And
it sounds like magic to me, but so whatever.
Little carb heavy. And so I don't want us to have heart attacks by the time we're 40. So I try and do a lot of the cooking, or at least meal planning, so that we're having somewhat healthy meals. So with that said, we basically plan out our meals every weekend. And then on Sunday, we go grocery shopping for the week. And I basically try and plan out those meals to the point where we're writing them on a whiteboard on our fridge, what we're going to eat each day of the week. I know it sounds a little crazy, but it does help us, especially during the school year when Nate has a lot of after-school activities going on and I have a long commute, and it's easier to know exactly what we're going to be cooking as soon as we get in.
Yeah, I was not a huge fan of this at first because it really felt like we were locked into what we were doing. But as we've done it, I feel a lot better about it. It gives a lot of predictability to what we're doing, and we can kind of see, okay, well, this night of the week is going to be very busy. We can't do this meal that requires a lot of prep work. We're going to move it to a different night and put something simpler in its place. And that has really allowed us to plan out our evenings a lot better and to have more times for ourselves and our family to really kind of enjoy being a family instead of just spending in the kitchen, cooking, eating, and then going to bed, which sometimes was what happened.
Yeah, having a toddler grabbing onto your leg screaming while you're trying to cut a red pepper up or something like that. So,
yeah, super fun.
It happens a lot. So the other great thing about planning meals out is it helps with your grocery list. I actually put everything on a spreadsheet that I have my phone with me in the grocery store, and I have my spreadsheet out. And I have my list. So I know what meals we're going to be cooking. So I know exactly what ingredients I need. And I just do everything based on those meals, aside from, of course, staples like eggs and milk and such. But we only buy items that we're going to need for the meals for that week. And it really tends to cut down on your grocery bills if you do it that way.
Well, again, just like having the list on the board or on the fridge really adds predictability. Having a plan of what you're going to buy at the store means that you don't have the option of going into the store and saying, ooh, this looks good, and grabbing that, and ooh, this looks good, I'm going to grab that. Because I have a tendency to really want to do that. I go down the junk food aisle and I would probably grab 90% of the things that are there if it was up to me. But because we have a list, because we know exactly what we're doing, we have things planned out, it's a lot easier to resist that temptation because it's not on the list, it doesn't get to go in the cart.
Except when Nate whines a lot about wanting chips or cookies. Then occasionally I let him.
Yeah, and occasionally spending an extra few dollars on something just delicious is okay.
I'm okay with ice cream, but not the chips. So another trick with the grocery store, and you've probably heard this, it's definitely gone around, it's tried and true, but staying away from like the center aisles and trying to buy stuff along the outside of the grocery store. So staying away from packaged food. Actually, not just for health reasons, but for money too. You always hear that it's like actually kind of more expensive to eat healthy. It can be, but I just think about how we will occasionally buy a bag of like chicken tenders or something in the frozen food aisle, and it tends to cost around $9 or so for a bag of chicken tenders. And it barely feeds all three of us. It's not that much food for one meal. But we can get fresh raw chicken for somewhere around $2 a pound, separate it out into bags and freeze it, and that's our food for maybe a couple weeks. So way cheaper to do it. And if you thaw it and marinate it, it's actually much better than the bag chicken, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love bag chicken occasionally, especially when they have a nice thick skin on there that you just bread it and ooh, it's delicious.
The carbs.
Yeah, I love carbs. You can't get me wrong. From Philadelphia, leave me alone. It is much healthier, and it's really not that hard to kind of get fresh stuff, and if you need to, freeze it and then have it ready to go. It's really not any more planning, and any planning that is required, you do one time a week and you're ready to go.
Yeah, so we tend to try and stick to simple meals unless we want to be really adventurous. But, honestly, things like rice, black beans, chicken, like I said, any sort of fresh veggies or fruits, they all just go a long way. And you can do a lot of different combinations with them pretty easily. I mean, we have plenty of nights with especially in the summer, with just rice, grilled chicken, and like corn on the cob or something. Yeah,
and it's really also fun to try to find new things to do with the same ingredients, because you can do an amazing amount of different things with some different spices and the same general set of ingredients. You can make a lot of things out of that. And it's fun to try to figure out what I can do differently to make something taste better.
I don't really get the fun part, but but I like the saving money. And, it's just, you kind of collect ingredients as you go along. When you do this for years and years, you tend to just collect classic ingredients that you use a lot, which helps with your grocery bills as well. Because you're just kind of replacing those items when you need to and finding meals that will go along with what you already have. So we do that a lot too.
Yeah, and it also always ensures that you have something that you can do something with. If you have familiar ingredients always on stock, you can do something good, quick, and easily.
Yep, exactly.
And the last thing I wanted to touch on is something that I call the meal opportunity cost. Now, opportunity cost in economics is when you spend money on something, you had a cost because you could have done something else with that money. I like to think of a meal opportunity cost. If you go out, let's say, for cooked meals at home versus going out to eat, say we spend about $100 a month, $100 a week on groceries, which is what we find ourselves roughly doing. We get about 20 meals out of that $100. So between two people, that's about $2.50 per meal that it costs. You're not going to find that going out pretty much anywhere unless you go to Burger King and get their 10-piece chicken nuggets for $1.49.
Which Nate knows well.
Yes, I do. But really breaking it down, $2.50 a meal per person is not bad. Now, if I want to go out to lunch and it costs $10, my meal opportunity cost is 4 at-home cooked meals. Or putting it another way, one meal of going out costs me as much as 4 meals doing it at home. It's an interesting way to think of how you spend your money and how you spend the food budget that you have. Because I could eat for a day and then have a breakfast, lunch, or dinner the next day, or I can have one regular meal going out. It's maybe not the best way to look at things, but I do find it interesting to kind of compare things that way.
And I'll add one tidbit here. I'm thinking about what I do at work for breakfast and lunches. I get into work really early, so I eat breakfast at work too. And one thing that has helped me is I'll stock up at the grocery store on like a big tub of Greek yogurt and a bag of granola and some fresh fruit and, whatever else. And I'll take it all into work with me at the beginning of the week. And, it's just really cheap, easy, healthy and good meals, particularly for breakfasts, but also for lunches. Sometimes all it takes is taking in some bread and some peanut butter and maybe some jelly. So there's definitely a lot of ways to make your breakfasts and lunch at work good, but also cheap.
Absolutely. And I think on that note, we're going to leave it off here. You can always check us out on budgetcouple.com, and if you have any suggestions or things you do for your meal planning, leave us a comment at budgetcouple.com/episode 8.
And also let us know if you have any other topics that you'd like discussed. We're running out of ideas over here.
No, we're open books. We have plenty of stuff ready to go, but we do appreciate input so that we can plan out things more in the future.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
And we'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Budget Couple Podcast with your hosts, Nate and Danielle. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit budgetcouple.com. Make sure to check out the next episode of the Budget Couple Podcast, where we'll talk more about life, family, and how to afford it. We'll catch you next time.